Hi folks, Irish Paul. Here we are. This is lesson 8 of the concealed carry course, cleaning and maintenance. Because this is a little messy, it helps if you put on some latex gloves. If you're allergic to latex, don't use that. Use something that works for you. And that just keeps the oil off your skin, saves you absorbing it, might save you from a few little metal shards as well. We're going to start off with a semi-auto. This is a SIG. It was at the range this afternoon, so it's nice and dirty. It got a bit of a workout, so I know for sure this gun's going to have some carbon. So before we start, I have my gear assembled. What I use, I typically use Hops products because you get the solvent bore cleaner oil, which is good for getting the dirt off, and then a little lubricating oil afterwards, and I'll show you how that gets used in due course. You're going to need various tools. Really, you should have some kind of a brush. It's like something like a toothbrush, only a little narrower. That's to get into the nooks and crevices. This is my good kit, so I've got like my little dentist tool for poking in. It also helps some household items like a Q-tip. Q-tip will get you into little tight places where you can swab them out. So you want to have your kit organised. I like to use the old British military 4x2 cloth, but you can buy patches or you just rip up an old t-shirt, just as long as it's something suitably absorbent. And you're going to want a few of these, so just tear a few of them in readiness. So, first thing to do is make sure the gun is safe. So we take out the magazine, put it to one side, check the chamber, nothing in the chamber, all clear. We, on this particular model, field stripping it, the slide needs to be held to the rear, and then you rotate the stripping device, the takedown lever, and then you just let the slide go forward and off it comes. So you've got the receiver, the guide rod and spring, the barrel, which drops out of the slide, then you've got the slide itself. I can see looking at this, it's a little oily. Before I shot it, it was fairly clean and well maintained, so I don't want to spend forever on this. I just want to go over the basics, give you an idea what you have to do. So, what I like to do for a start is to get a wet patch. So I got a piece of 4x2. Put it on a cleaning rod, get it wet in the oil, and give the barrel a good hit, because the barrel is it's where your performance comes from. And this is probably going to drip a little. There we go. And if you'll see that's bringing a certain amount of dirt off. But what it's doing now, I've got the inside of the barrel nice and wet, and I just let that soak for a little while to loosen the dirt. Now I don't waste this oily cloth, and I'm glad now I'm wearing gloves, but this oily cloth can be used to rub down the inner parts of the slide. So anywhere that you get carbon building up, get it nice and wet, loosen the dirt up, and any surface carbon buildup that you see, and this will be the same in virtually any semi-auto, you're going to get it on the bolt face, on the face of the breech where the firing pin comes through. That's an area you're going to get a certain amount of carbon building up. So you want to get in there with the oily cloth, and then on the actual receiver frame, You want to get those areas where carbon's there. I can see that sort of black and sooty. So I want to get in there with my wet oily patch, clean the rails. Down into the magazine well a bit. Now, as I say, the gun was clean before I started and only shot maybe 50 rounds through it, so it's not horrendously dirty. So now I've got everything wet and oily. The guide rail typically doesn't need much attention. You just inspect it, make sure it's okay, put it to one side. The magazine, you might want to give it a wipe down, mostly the upper parts, but you can give the whole metal surface a bit of a run down and try and get in under the lips. This piece here, you don't have to take your magazine apart every time you shoot it, but if it gets a lot of dirt or sand in there, you may eventually. If you hear it getting gritty, this is pretty smooth, but if you hear it getting crunch, crunch, crunch where it's got sand and grit, you might need to take off the base plate, get right inside and clean it. But at the moment it's not too bad, so I'm just going to wet the outside. So now everything's kind of wet and oily, so we'll put the oily patch to one side, dry my hands off a little bit of kitchen roll. And now I'm going to get my 9mm brush, phosphor bronze brush, and I keep them in the packaging sometimes so they can see I got the right diameter. So this is a 9mm 357 size. And now I want to get into the barrel, and this is where I'm getting all the dirt loosened up. I just push that through a few times. Give it a good hard scrub. And since it was already oily and since it was already loose, that should have gotten rid of any major buildup. Now, got another stiff brush. You can attend to things like around the face of this and the feed ramp. The feed ramp is where the bullet hits on its way in, and that can get kind of sooty. You want to get that nice and clean if you can. Into the nooks and crannies. Now I want to dry it off. So I want to dry the gun, put it back together. So a dry, clean patch, hit it up the barrel. You see the dirt on that? I'll shove that through a couple of times, and then again, being economical, no point wasting good stuff. You can turn the patch inside out and use it again. So you give a good old tight work through until when you look through it, hold it up to the light, it should look like a mirror. Should be nice and clean and shiny. Another way to gauge that is put that patch aside, get another clean one. Hit the barrel again. And if that patch is coming out clean, you know you've done a good job. There's no dirt or deposits left in the barrel. Times you might need more than one patch to get it really clean. Actually, now that I'm working this, I'm getting a little extra dirt out of it. So these patches don't go to waste. Now you use them for the outside. You wipe down the outside of the barrel until you've dried the oil off. And at this point, the feed ramp, all the rest of it should be clean to the touch and dry. So put the barrel to one side along with the guide spring, the magazine, wipe the oil off it. It's had a moment to soak, but now we'll dry it off. because we're going to want it ready to use. So clean dry patch, get in to the feed ramp, make sure it's nice and clean. Put that to one side. Doesn't matter which order you do this in, as long as you wind up with everything clean. Now we're going to the slide. It's called the slide because it slides backwards and forwards. I'm just drying off the oil on the outside now. I might think that's not clean enough. I might just hit it with a wire brush and get my little toothbrush type brush and get into the nooks and crannies. Perhaps even the narrow brush right down into the rails, the gaps along the side that it slides along. Get all the contamination out of there. So now I feel it's getting clean, so we can use these slightly soiled patches, dry off the oil. And this oil, one of the things I like about hops oil, it actually smells quite nice too, so it's not as disgusting. There are some oils that I don't like the smell of. I'm not going to name names, but anyway. So all these parts are clean. The only part we have left now is the receiver, so we're hitting the receiver, giving it a good wipe down, getting into these grooves, making sure they're nice and clean and free of contaminants. Get in around the hammer. Maybe down a little into the magazine well. On a Glock there's a lot of nooks and crannies in here, and some of them can really only be reached with a Q-tip. But basically you will see the carbon where it's built up, and that's what you're trying to clean out. You're trying to get rid of the carbon buildup, get the gun back looking as close to new as you can. So that's pretty good. I'm very happy with that now. I think I've done a good enough job. The gun looks nice and clean. I've got all the carbon off it. Time to think about putting it back together. So put the tools aside. Get the slide. The barrel goes in. Nearly all semi-autos work similar to this, but whichever one you have, there will be a video on YouTube that tells you how to do it. So you need to familiarise yourself with your own gun. That's just the long and the short of it. Right, there's that spring seated. That can be the tricky bit. If you're not careful, that can spring off and hit you. Now, before I put this on, I'm going to get the lubricating oil and just a little drop along the rails. Not the whole length, just front and back. So at the points of contact where the actually just smear that up and down a little bit. Well, that's the point of contact between the slide and the receiver, and this is an aluminum or an alloy receiver, so it's metal to metal contact. So now we line up the guide rods, or not the guide rod, the slide onto the receiver, and then it goes back to the position where it holds to the rear. So now it's held to the rear, then we twist this back into position, hit the release, and that's what we're expecting. Now at this point, might want to give it a once over. Got a little bit of oil there. I'm going to want to work it. Sounds nice and slick. Sounds the way it ought to. One other point you might want to put a drop of oil is just here where the barrel and the slide make contact. Doesn't do it any harm to have a little bit of lubrication there. Not just, will save a bit of wear and tear. So, slide's working, single action, good, double action, good. Decocker works, my SIG seems to be functioning just fine. That's how you clean a semi-auto pistol. So what about the revolver, you say? Well, the revolver, very similar proposition, simpler if anything, but with your revolver you don't have to take it apart. What you do have to do though, you need to get your oily rag, your oily cloth, go through the cylinders one at a time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hit the barrel, take your oily cloth, try and get the carbon off the face of the cylinder here is where you're going to get the biggest build-up. So get that in there. Get your brushes, give it a good scrub, try and get all that off. Try and get in the nooks and crannies around where the chamber and the barrel meet. You get a build-up of carbon there. Use your oily patch, wet these surfaces, try and loosen up the dirt, and then you get dry patches and you just keep hitting it with a dry patch until it's nice and clean, the barrel, whatever it takes. Wipe it down. Now one thing with the revolver, I have seen on 2 instances lately where people hadn't thoroughly cleaned their revolvers and the revolver's actually locked up on the range. Now that's something that should never happen, but it does happen. It happens if you don't clean them right. So if your cylinder is tight, if it's not rotating as freely as it should, you lift the star, you can drop some oil down in at that point, just let gravity bring it down in and use the star to work it in, and then the oil gets down in there and your cylinder should swing freely. If your cylinder's not swinging freely, if it's gritty, you're in danger of getting a stoppage on a revolver, which is a bad situation. And any gun, if it's not properly maintained, will fail eventually. There is no gun that does not require maintenance. So I hope that's clear. Just to make sure we've covered everything, I'm just going to look at the text here. We've done field stripping, we've done the cleaning kit, we've done that you have to unload it, solvents, lubrication, function check, make sure it looks like it's going to work, and that's it. And then when everything's hunky-dory, you dry it off because you don't want it spoiling your clothes, and then you're ready to load her up and go back into service or go to the range, whatever it takes. So hope you enjoyed this. Cleaning guns isn't hard. A lot of people, whether they don't have the right equipment, whether they don't have the knowledge, I don't know, but you should know your own gun, and cleaning kits are maybe 10 or 15, $20 tops. If you take it to a gunsmith to get it cleaned, they're going to charge you $25. The gun really should be cleaned every time after it's been shot. If you shoot it and don't clean it, you can get a build-up of carbon, you can get corrosion, and eventually you're going to stop working. So don't let that be you. Have a good one. Bye.